Hello and welcome to Craft with Sarah. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can customize layered SVGs to remove layers that you don't want to cut out. This can be especially helpful if you're making one of my animal layered SVGs, such as the ones you can see on the screen now. I've made all of these fairly decorative with my signature style, which is the flower and leaf pattern within each of the layers to add a little bit of extra visual interest. However, I know that this isn't necessarily everyone's favourite style, and if you want to make more of a realistic looking animal, you'll probably want to hide those flower and leaf layers. Don't worry, it's super easy to do in Cricut Design Space, and I'll show you how. If you have a silhouette machine or a scan and cut machine, then you need to check out a different video, which will be one specifically recorded for your machine software. To find those, go to craftwithsarah.com/help, then choose your type of machine on the page. But if you've got a Cricut, no matter which type of Cricut you've got, you're in the right place right now. So let's get started. First, select the SVG that you want to customize and upload it into Cricut Design Space. If you're not sure how to do that, head to craftwithsarah.com/help, select the Cricut option, and then there's a separate tutorial in there on how to upload SVGs into Design Space. We can see all the layers in this design by clicking on it, and then in the Layers panel over here on the right-hand side, press the little arrow and that will open everything up. You can then see all of the pieces that are making up this design. If you have a large screen, it might be easier to move the design nearer the Layers panel so that you can see them next to each other a little easier. There are two different ways in which you can remove the layers. So for this design, I would perhaps want to remove the flowers and also this little pattern in the tail. You can either look down the Layers panel until you find the one that you think it is and then click it. Hover your mouse over and press the eye, and that lets you see that you have got the right one selected. You can either just keep it hidden by clicking the eye to turn it off, in which case the layer still exists in your project, but your Cricut won't cut it out. Or if you prefer, you can click on that layer with it still showing. You see I've got that one selected because it's gone green, and then press the trash can icon at the top, and that will delete it from the project. It will still be present on the original SVG file, so if you wanted to make this in the future and still have the flowers on it, then just go into your uploaded images and then you'll be able to add it again to your project with all those pieces back on. And then for the tail, again, I can look down in the Layers panel until I find the right one, click the eye to make sure that is the right one, and then either leave it like that or select it and press delete. If you change your mind, you can undo by pressing the undo button up here. This can also be helpful if you accidentally delete the wrong layer. The other way you can do it is by clicking directly on the picture itself rather than using the Layers panel. So I could click on this flower layer. Now you see that hasn't actually let me select it, and that's because all of the layers in my parrot are grouped at the moment. You can tell this by scrolling to the top of the Layers panel, then you see you've got this group title with the little arrow on the left. To ungroup all the pieces to separate them out, press the Ungroup button at the top of the Layers panel. Click away, and now you can click back on the image, and it's going to select the bits that you click on. Now this is a little bit harder, in my opinion, than finding the layers in the Layers panel because Design Space tends to just kind of select the very top layer of what you're clicking. So I'm trying to click to select this flower layer, but you can see it's not actually working. It's selecting a wing layer instead. If I click down there, it's selecting the branch instead. So I'm finding it very difficult, actually kind of impossible, to actually select this flower layer. It might work better on the tail. Yes, it does, because there's nothing else sort of around it. So I was able to click on that tail you see here, and it selected the correct one. Then I could delete or hide it. But for this one with the flowers, it's going to be much easier to find it in the Layers panel rather than clicking on the design. So even just by taking out those two layers, you see my parrot is now looking much more realistic. You could go one step further and take out these shapes in the head as well. So I've clicked my top layer of the head, which is the one with the cutouts. I can hide that, but now it doesn't look quite right because it's the wrong colour underneath. So let's click the layer underneath, go into the colour picker at the top, and then choose the original colour that it was, which I think was that one. Let's just check. No, a little bit darker. There we go. So now we've gone from the original, very stylized image to one that's a little bit simpler and a little bit more realistic. Let's try again with a different image. Now let's take a look at this Basset hound design. There are lots of flowers and layers making up this, and again, you may want to remove them to make the dog look more realistic. If you'd like to make the perfect paper craft of your pooch, there are over 200 different dog breed SVGs available in my shop at craftwithsarah.com. There are also cats, small pets, horses, farm animals, and a whole bunch of other different animals. So if you've got a favourite animal, or maybe a pet that's a little bit more on the unusual side, you should still be able to find a design to match. Alright, so I'm going to do the technique of looking down the layers panel because I just find it so much easier. So let's start at the bottom. Let's go all the way down. I'm going to click on this second layer. This is the darker cream colour, and then click the eye, and that should be hiding that flower for me. If you weren't sure which one to click, you can click any of them and just toggle on that eye, and then you know if you're removing a flower layer or not. So you can see for this one I'm not, because none of the flowers are being changed. If I go up one layer and hide that, then that is taking the flowers away from those back legs. And then I'm just going to work through the whole thing, taking out the flower pieces, and see how that then ends up looking. So now we have a much more realistic dog, and as much as I love the ones with flowers, I do also think they look lovely without them as well. So it's completely up to you how you decide to use the SVGs. One of the benefits of removing the flowers is that this then makes it a lot easier to cut at a smaller size. If you wanted to cut this dog maybe as a fridge magnet, or to go on a greetings card, or some other place where it's going to be cut quite small, you'll probably find that your Cricut would struggle with these flowery pieces. However, by removing them, you're simplifying the image, making all the shapes much easier to cut, so this could be done very, very small, and it would still cut absolutely perfectly. Let's see an example of that. This time I've got a cute little Halloween cat poking out of a pumpkin. This design has got lots of patterned layers on. Not only does it have the leaves inside the pumpkin, but also a wave pattern inside the cat and the bits in the light and around the edges of the top. This time I'm actually going to cut the design to show you how it looks when it's been cut out with all the pieces on and when we cut the simplified version. So I'll do 2 large versions of each of them, and then I'll also cut the simplified version very, very small so that you can see just what's possible with your Cricut machine. Although I personally find it much easier to remove the patterns if it's going to be cut really small, and I'm talking around 3 inches tall here, so it is quite tiny. That's not to say that you couldn't cut it in its complete original form at a small size. In fact, one of my friends is currently working her way through all of our layered gnomes and cutting them out at 3 inches tall. She's definitely set herself a challenge, but she's done around 50 so far, and she hasn't actually removed any of the pattern pieces. She's cut them all exactly as is, even at 3 inches tall. So if you did want to keep all the details, absolutely give it a go. You may just find that the Cricut struggles on some that are particularly intricate, and you may have to try a couple of times before it cuts through properly. But if you want to make your life a little bit easier, you can remove those pattern bits. So let's take a look on here. I prefer working from the bottom up. I'm going to click on that one first to get rid of the lines in the light, and then work through the different pattern pieces. And I know it's a little bit easier for me because obviously I'm really familiar with the design, so I can tell just by looking at it which ones I need to hide. But you can trial and error it too if you're not sure. Just click the eye on and off again. It's really easy to undo if you accidentally turn off something you didn't mean to. That's all those patterns hidden now, but I think we can go one step further with these paws and remove the little cutouts for the claws. So I'll hover over the 2 black paws and hide them. This now doesn't look right with white paws, so we'll select one of them, go into the color selector and choose black, and then the other one, do the same. And then rather than do the cat in a very dark grey, let's change that to black as well. I think this is a good example of showing how the designs look completely different without those patterned images, but it's still super cute. I'll cut one of each of these at the original size, but also do one of these ones with the simplified designs at 3 inches tall. So let's duplicate it and then make this one 3 inches tall. You can already see how tiny that is going to be. I'll get all those cut out and stuck together and then we'll take a look. Here's what the pumpkin cat looks like cut out and stuck together with all of the original layers and patterns on it. So I cut everything out for this one and you can see that it's cut beautifully along all of those patterns because this is quite a large sized paper craft, so it makes it easy for the cutting machines to do all of those extra details. Let's compare it to one that's also been cut at a large size, but this time it doesn't have any of those details on. So this is the simplified version that we just made in the software tutorial. They both look absolutely gorgeous, but this one cut a lot quicker than this one because I didn't have to do all these decorative parts, and that's the parts that really takes the time if you're cutting out. So if you're in a rush, doing something like this can mean you still end up with a gorgeous papercraft project, but it takes probably around half the time, if not more than that, to cut. And I did promise a tiny version too to show how the plainer version looks really small. So here we go. It's very, very tiny, just 3 inches tall and cut beautifully. It had a little bit of trouble sticking those little dots in the eye on, but apart from that, everything was lovely. And you just look at the size difference between those two. All right, so now you've learned how to remove layers from layered cardstock designs and how to simplify the designs so that you can make them really, really small. For the last part of this tutorial, let's take a look at how you can do those same tricks of removing layers, but also use that to reduce the colours so that if you don't have all the colours that you need in a design, you can work it out to make the most of your existing craft supplies. Here is the final image which I'll work through in this video to show how removing layers can dramatically change how an SVG file looks. We've got this Zentangle design lion head on the screen. You might find, particularly on a design like this with lots of very similar but not quite the same colours, that you might not have enough shades of card in your craft stash to be able to cut it. Rather than going out and buying lots of new card, you could simplify the design to take out some of those colours. Let's just count the amount of colours we've got to start with. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Let's see if we can get that down a little bit. Okay, so first I'll go through and take out the very intricate patterned layers. This one's a little harder to tell because they look similar colours. And then also take out some of the details around here. I'm going to keep that around the ears because that adds quite a nice little touch. I want to keep that one, which is the solid layer at the bottom of the mane, but I think we could probably remove that one. Now we can look at simplifying the colours. At the moment, there are two quite similar creamy colours. You've got one under the eye and then the one in these bits up here and the chin. I think we could change the ones under the eye to match the one under the kind of snout area. You see, that still looks lovely, and now we've taken out one of the colours, so we're already one down. Rather than using a bright yellow for the eyes, this could be perhaps the same goldy colour that's around the edge, this darker bit in the ears. We could change the nose around by making this one the black colour of the eyes, and then the little pink bit on top could be a darker brown instead. If I delete that one, let's see how many colours we've got now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're down a few. I think we can do a bit better though. The colour sync button is nice because it lets you drag and drop between colours so you can see how things look. I just moved that one onto that dark gold colour. That doesn't quite look right, so we'll undo that. But potentially the dark gold in the ears would look nice. The same brown as that. It's perhaps not quite right, but we could go in and select the layers and have a little play and try and get it to a more suitable colour. That one's quite nice. And then where was my ear colour? That one. Let's put that to the same. So I've now gone from that original selection of all those colours down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Much easier if you're on a limited colour palette, especially something like an animal where there are lots of similar shades of cardstock in the same colour. Again, I'll cut this one out and then compare it to the original so you can see how they look next to each other. Here's what the original lion looks like with all of the patterns and all of the different colours. So this is how it looked right at the beginning before I did anything to it. I've stuck it together with glue and foam squares following the assembly guide that's included in the download folder. This is really, really lovely. I love how it really feels like he's looking at you. The depth that you get in the face really helps for those piercing eyes to be coming out. But what about the simplified version? Does it still have that same effect? Well, I would say it definitely does. So this is the version after I removed those layers and combined some of the colours together so it needed less sheets of card and less different individual colours. I think generally I prefer the colours of card that I used for this one. This is a much richer kind of yellowy browny colour than the one on this one. But even just looking at them next to each other, they look completely different with the stylised version and the much more realistic looking version, but both are still absolutely stunning and a wonderful and fun project to make. I hope that you enjoyed this video on how you can remove layers from your Cricut projects that you don't want to cut out. For even more Cricut videos just like this one, go to craftwithsarah.com/help and then select Cricut from the type of machine options. To make sure you don't miss out on any future videos, subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. That really does help me out. If you've got any ideas for future videos, leave me a comment underneath this one and I will get back to you. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!